Okay. So basically, each area in India has its own rhythm instruments. They are classified as classical and folk instruments. So Mridangam per se comes from South India, mainly 4 states, which is Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Andhra. These are the people who use this instrument as a main accompaniment instrument for classical singing. Okay. It has a very interesting history of how things came about. Okay. Tawil also is a major instrument which is played with the Shehnai counterpart, which is Nadaswaram down south. So if you go to like gharanas or ways of playing that instrument or the thought process behind that instrument and its development, if you go towards Madurai and upwards in, or I should say downwards in South India, you hear a lot of Tawil influence in Mridangam playing also, but it won't be as harsh. The concepts are from the Tawil, but execution will be on Mridangam, and it will be a different kind of playing in that sense. And then you had something like Tanjavur. Now Tanjavur has even now Sarfoji's family still resides there. Okay, Shivaji's cousin, Shivaji Maharaj's cousin still resides there. So when a Maharashtrian ruler ruled south of India, that is Tanjavur basically, you had Kirtankars coming from here towards south, and Pakhwaj was first time heard in the south also as an accompaniment for Kirtans. And that brought about a change in the make of the instrument, which used to be quite, there are 2 ways of having this instrument. One is like this, has a good ring, if you can hear, versus how do you say, subdued ring on the right. That would be the original make, and that used to be, one argument was, lot of the music that you hear down south is gamak based and microtonal movements. So if you had a very ringing tone, it might show the singer or the instrument player in bad light. So you had instruments which won't ring too much, which will make sense in the whole context, overall context of the music. So, but with the coming in of instruments like violin or mandolin, the sustain could be, varied across the spectrum, and hence you have 2 kinds of make of the right. One is called Kappi Mridangam, which is more of that subdued tone, but a very strong sound. And one is Kuchi, which I am playing today, which is more of the ring side to it. So most of the dancers and let's say the instrumentalists, they prefer this kind of open sound. So I manage it between not too harsh, not too soft kind of a thing. Okay.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Good.
So I take it and let's playing the sound of the instrument so that everybody gets to hear how it sounds per se. Okay. The right, you have, this is called, typical in Tamil language, it is called Balandarai, which is your right. And like Pakhwaj, it has a Shahi in between. But the only thing is that the first rim that you see is very close to the Shahi. Whereas in Pakhwaj, it will be somewhere here. It will end somewhere here. Hence, the ring of the Pakhwaj is more. And here is as to taste. You can, if you pull it back, then it will ring more. Okay, but the catch is you get this sharp tones are very neatly done. Like for example, so that makes a difference in sound. Left also, left is basically they used to have rava atta, which would add to the bass. Like in Pakhwaj, you have gehu ka atta, but now you have replacements which are like play doh and other stuff which can be put on and then taken off. So those are replacements. So I'll just give you a small bit of playing just to make you familiar with the sound of the instrument. Okay. So this is what it sounds like roughly. Accompaniment wise, it will change with respect to the scenario that you have. Yeah, the dynamics that I played in between might not be applicable in all the stages that I am seen performing in, because a lot of electronic instruments on stage, some sensibilities are only applicable with acoustic instruments. When you do, you tend to be louder than normal in a electronic scenario. So these are the basic things. We talked about the make of the instrument. Yes, gharanas also are there in South India. So primarily, as I said, area-wise it changes. So Kerala has its own style of doing things. South of India, Rameshwaram, Karaikudi, those places have a different kind of playing. Madurai has a different kind of playing. And then as you come towards Chennai, then it gets all muddled and then it becomes one. Okay, because a lot of people are basing themselves out of Chennai. So you have people from Andhra also staying there. You have people from Kerala, everybody. So it's like a mix there. And hence the playing also, you get to hear a lot of mixed gharanas there.
So
But
Sridharji,
yes,
can you play a few of distinctive their styles if you can, so that people would
yeah,
know
yeah.
of.
So I will give you like uh, more of staccato playing, kind of staccato playing, but very meaningful. You will see in very mathematical approach. You will see in Kerala.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. The sounds also will be more of how do you say, strong, not ringing sounds much. That kind of an execution you will see, and that is my observation. People might differ in opinion. So the one, I'll just recite this for you first. tin, na ta ta tin, tin na, tin na ka ta ka tin ka tin ka tin ta ta tin, na ta ta tin na ta 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 ti kin da ta ti ta tum, tin na ka ta ta tin ta ka ta ti kin da ta ti ta tum, tin na ta ka tin na ta ti kin da ta ti ki ta tum, tin na ka ta ka tin ta ti kin da ta ti ki ta tum. Tin na ka ta ka tin na tin na ta ti ki ta la tum ga tin ta ka tin ta ka ta ti ki na ta ti ki ta tum ta ti ki na ta ti ki ta tum ki na ta ti ki ta tum ta tin na tin na tin ta ka tin ta ka tin ta tin na tin na tin na ta ka ta tin ta ka ti ki ta ti ki ta tum ta ti ki ta ti ki ta tum ki na ta ti ki ta tum ki ta tin. So this is like a very rhythmic exposition of the Adital that we are talking about. I'll just play this for you.
Wow.
This is, yeah, this is a kind of so it's hardcore rhythm and its breaks, which might be difficult for a instrumentalist or a singer to sing. That will be the approach when you see a person from Kerala, and it will be amazing structures you will come across that they arrive at. Okay, and this kind of playing not only for overall in South India, this kind of playing not only happens for the sum, but also for the place where you have your mukhra of the bandish coming in. So that can be at an odd bar somewhere in between, but they will arrive at those places very specifically. Of course, you'll have heard enough of Zakir. It's not, though there is a field element to it, it can be perfectly mathematically explained. So even a person in the medium stage of execution of these things can understand and then try to get to those levels. So it's a very teachable and very logical approach to this kind of play. Okay, so this is one. The other side I will tell you is what I learned is from the Karakudi. My guru is Vidwan K.R. Chandramouli, which is Karakudi R. Chandramouli ji. He just passed away 2 years back. He was 95 when he passed away, and he played till he was 92. So amazing technique and knowledge that didn't stop him from playing even at 92 and sounding yet. So lot to learn on that front. Tone down playing, changes to your thinking styles, and still retaining the surprise element wherever possible. So I'll just play one of his things. It's a small chorway. Again, I'll recite it first and thin, da 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 thin, da 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 thin, Na tatik takadang tatik thin. Na thin. Na thin. Na tatik takadang tatik thin. Na tik takadang tatik thin. Then takadang tik tak thin. Na tatik takadang tatik thin. Na thin. Na thin. Takata thin. Tatik takadang tatik takadang So this would typically come from, this is a common core vibe, but the ring and the other syllables that I played with is more towards the Tanjavur and Karakudi side of playing, more of open strokes rather than holding it down and muted strokes kinds. I will not call it a minus to hold down the strokes and then not sound. It has its own impact when you want to convey a certain phrase. So ways of thinking and what are some of the sounds that you like, or some of the sounds that you have grown up with, that finally dictates how you want to play the instrument basically. Okay, so these are some of the things. Of course, accompaniment angles also changes. In South, there is a change with respect to the North way of accompaniment. Okay, one is supposed to know the kriti roughly. The kriti is the bandish, and bandish is not just one 2-hour thing. It is like a whole song which has like mukra, antra, and the end section also. So what happens is basically, if you know the song, your accompaniment gets better, and you gel well with the overall performance. The other thing is the singer per se. I will come to the section for the instrumentalist later, but singer per se keeps the tali and sings the kriti, like in Drupad. So what happens is, like the Pakhwaj can actually run parallel to what is happening with the Drupad singer. Here we can also run parallel with the composition and do jugglery or embellish the composition as it comes through. Whereas in Hindustani khayal singing, the tabla is supposed to hold the theka meant for that tal throughout the performance. And when the instrumentalist or the singer holds one line for him to play, then he is free to play his side of the solo, his side of accompaniment for that bit. Okay, so that one, yeah. If coming back to the instrumental side of Carnatic playing, yes, you will need to have, if you don't play with that instrumentalist regularly, then somebody has to be in the audience to keep the tali for you, for both to know where you are in the cycle. So those things are there, but overall, you run parallel to the singer. You don't need to hold down the basic tala structure per se as an accompaniment. Okay. in dance it applies in a different way, because you have to sound in such a way that the dancer gets an idea of whether she should be on the right hand side or the left hand side, where she should be in the cycle. So maybe your accompaniment, if you carefully manage your left for the one section and not left for the one section, it makes sense to her sonically. So those are the points that one can actually concentrate on while accompanying dances also. So these are some of the things that happen in an overall scenario. Of course, fusion accompaniment is a totally different thing. You
So
have to
I wanted to, sorry to interrupt you, I wanted to actually pick your brain. You have done Tal Vadya Kacheri. You have played with different percussionists like Zakir Ji and Tabla and
Yeah,
Pakhwaj and Gummat
yeah,
and different, where it is a
yeah,
percussionist's delight, where there is no
yeah.
instrumental, where there is no Shankar Mahadevans. It is that particular
Okay,
position. We would like you to talk
yeah,
about, show us a couple of things what you do, where you are specifically in your own silo with but different percussions, where
okay,
it is either mathematical, which you showed us before, or whatever. So
yeah.
that's a beautiful
Okay,
thing.
okay, okay. The challenge in ensemble playing. I'll talk about Talvadi Kachis and also fusion segments together, because they fall for me in the same
Bracket.
category bracket, but the caliber needed for one might differ for the other. Okay. Why I say this is each kind of music, Carnatic music, has a certain pace to it, between which it dwells. It breathes nicely. Okay, you can have one of song which is pretty high in speed. Today, youngsters do that kind of a thing also, especially with violins, because now you have access to Western way of handling the violin also, so your bowing speeds and all that comes into play. You are able to execute a song in a certain speed, which might not have been done in the past. Okay, might not. Uh, I mean, stalwarts like M.S. Gopalakrishnan ji or Lalgudi ji, they have done it all. I'm just saying a new perspective maybe to the same thing. Okay. So in that sense, Mridangam also being an accompaniment and not primarily a solo instrument that has come into existing. Solo Mridangam has been in existence for maybe the last uh, 30 or 40 years only, whereas tabla has a tradition which goes longer than that as a solo instrument, because you never got to play your stuff in a classical concert per se when you're accompanying. So hence the need for exploring it as a solo instrument came into play, is my understanding. Whereas in Mridangam, you are running parallel with the singer, you are doing all the jugglery that is needed to happen, and you are a respite to all the music that was done as maybe only the rhythm section, and then coming back to the song. So the requirement would be for not more than 20-25 minutes on the outside for a good Mridangam solo in an overall concert of, let's say, 3 hours. That used to be the structure. But we have beautiful artists like Vidwan Umayalapuram K. Shiramanji, who made it a point to show that he can play a solo for 1.25 hours, 1.5 hours, and that too highly entertaining, not necessarily cryptic in playing. Okay, and then there was Vidwan Karakudi Maniji, who did these amazing out of reach uh, uh, ensemble playing, which was like they would know how to react when a certain thing is happening, how would they come in. All that was pre-planned, but it was, I don't think I have seen any kind of presentation on the Indian front from that angle, coming from South India at least. So there were two main people who made this happen as a solo instrument. And so still they broke barriers in the sense, if you are given a timeline, within that timeline what all speeds could be done. But when you come to a fusion stage, then I think the effect of Shakti, John McLaughlin ji and Sakir Bhai and Viku ji and L. Shankar, they had said this thing that everything would be fast and then, crystal clear. So fusion side needs a certain speed to execute. So you need to modify your technique and your thinking process if you're given solos in those speeds. So that was a challenge initially. And I'll just demonstrate a small thing and then talk about it also. Okay. So what I did prior was, this was the pace. Now you have something like, this is what is going on. So you don't strain yourself, but the stress is on sound there. Okay. Technical things are for a certain classical audience. So there the stress is more towards sound and speed. So things known to you, how do you execute? For example, now this will carry in a fast-paced scenario. So you are at the roughly the same level of execution that everybody does. So you are not the odd guy out. So that is more important than approaches of a fusion nature or of a only talavadya nature, because all the talavadya that has been happening, at least in the north, tabla has been leading the show. So when you come in, you better play and adhere to what is required on stage. It needs a certain preparation, yes. But I've been lucky to be at it from, let's say, 88 onwards. So I have a little better picking up like crazy now. Youngsters are playing like nobody's business. But I have had the opportunity to interact with more people here in Mumbai. That's how I put it.
Tell me the difference, Siddharji, now that you've talked about percussionists with percussionists and the need for importance, because if you have to rehearse it. Tell me now, let us take you back to the international instrumentalists like Western you have played with. What are the kind of experiences you want to share with us with that?
So one thing I have learned from my guru and try to follow is, even in a scenario where Mridangam is a foreign instrument to that section, they should miss you when you don't come in the next time. It should be so seamless. You play in such a way that you sound up to be a part of that ensemble itself. If you stand out and do, that is for your solo section, not for when you're playing with their music. So you have to modify the way you think and come in at places where you get noticed, you don't overpower. You have to have this attitude of being a part of an ensemble first, than yourself. That's how I would put it. So I think that's where you can make the difference and then feel needed by any section. That's how I'll put it.
How would you contrast this versus your experience? Let's say Shankar Mahadevan. You
Ah,
played a lot with him and with that. So how would you
yeah.
compare that experience, and
Ah.
how do you react your mridangam accordingly to such situations?
Yeah. So one is way back in the 80s. I mean, no much distraction. So we would have played a lot of concerts at home, be it somebody's birthday or somebody's mom's, dad's wedding anniversary or whatever. We would just go and play, and that resulted in an overall understanding across artists, uh, uh, to know where we fit in and how things can be done. So it boils down to a very important point: is spending time with artists and not just social life. Basically, sitting and playing and trying things out, getting things when they solidify to the audience. That makes a big difference to the understanding that happens. And once that understanding happens, I think you will try and do that every stage you go on. So the center stage artist might change, but your attitude to gel with that kind of music and then be a part of it makes a big difference in the overall. So Shankar is no exception. Classical music was always there. When he moved into film and other forms of music, whenever there was a recording and he would need a mridangam, I was lucky to be called as a first person. And in the studio, we would talk about groove would go well with this, which should not be played, which is contrasting, disturbing the whole song. So this was also being a part of the old film industry. I had played with film songs also. So that gave you an understanding of how they look at the mridangam in a bigger ensemble. Okay. So I think all that comes to basically not taking away somebody's place, but still making an impact somewhere with your instrument. That's how I see the ensemble playing over.
So before I throw it over to the group, I had one last question.
Yeah,
Now, when you play
yeah,
with, let's say, when you're playing with a good tabla person, when you're
yeah,
playing with the pronunciation of the tabla, sharp pronunciation of tabla, you are,
yeah,
and tabla being established as a solo, people can play 1.5, 2 hours, 3 hours, and accept
yeah,
it
yeah,
socially. Which
yeah.
what are the challenges, and how do you, for example, react with the tabla? For example, if you say dhati to dhati to dha dhati to dhatrik to dhati to ti to dhati to, what what would be this repetitive? How would you think in that turn? I know,
So
I know you said
you,
rightly that we don't want to combat each other, we want to be part of it.
yeah,
But how?
yeah. So in certain contexts, I mean, when you're given a uh, let's say bit to play with the tabla, even for a recording, you have to carefully mold it and play it in such a way that it sounds very similar. Everything cannot, because the basic handling of the instrument is from top, whereas we are from the sides. So there are certain movements that are possible here, which are not possible on tabla, maybe, which are possible on tabla, which is not possible here. So you have to work around the whole system. Okay. Like for example, dhadinda kritikiti, dhatinta kritikiti, dhada kritikiti, dhada kritikiti. Now, typical fingering would be, I'll play slow. Now, if I want to play it at dhadinta kritikiti, dhadinta kritikiti, dhada kritikiti, dhada kritikiti, okay, I can. This was mridangam fingering.
Can you play it
But when
once
you hear,
again? Can you play it
yeah,
once again?
Yeah. Okay. So now I have played. I am not playing. You can, but that will be a strain, and I don't want to risk it at that speed. So now it becomes. So you are as close to what we do. This expectation of playing exactly the same thing on another instrument is only with mridangam or akhaj with respect to tabla. If I were to say there is a taiko player who is going to play with tabla player, would you expect this tukra to be played on that? Would be my question.
We would expect some other, like for example, if you're playing with
So
gummat, it'd be different.
yeah, so my point is comparison, yes, because it's similar looking instrument, similar sound instrument, we are expecting the same results. But each one has its own character and its own plus points, yeah, minus points are there, which will be getting covered slowly. The instrument progresses. In what it was 50 years back, things have changed on the Mridangam also. So that is an ongoing process. But as of now, if you want to execute certain things, there is a sure shot method of making it possible. In the whole process, I have not transferred maybe the tabla hand onto Mridangam to make it sound exactly like tabla, but I have retained how this would be played on Mridangam. So there it matches, and when you hear the sound, you hear a mix and match of both, and so it fits in properly. That's how I see it.
Great, great, wonderful. Thank you for
Yeah,
that. What we will
yeah.
do at this stage, Siddharji, is
Also, one other thing I would also like to say, for the audience, I mean, for people who don't know, is tuning wise. Let's say if it is C, then I am tuning it to the lower sa. Mridangam is always tuned to the lower note. So this is the lower sa, whereas tabla tunes it to the octave. So that is why you hear this difference of one being sharp and one being low. So that's one point one has to note.
but that's what adds to the beauty of the whole when
Yeah.
it's put together.
So when you complement each other like this, like what I did now, as an example, you have these differences, but everything is still falling in place. So that's how I will like to see it.
Excellent, excellent, wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think what we will do now is we will throw it open to the group.
Sure.
If you have any questions whatsoever, anything
Yeah.
about the structure, now or
Yeah.
never, we have Siddharji. He will be able, he's none other, he can explain so beautifully things which, and any questions which come to your mind,
Sure.
go ahead.
Can I ask one?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. It's really
Thank
enjoyable.
you.
So, since you mentioned tuning in the very end, that
Yeah.
you tune to the lower sa, uh,
Yeah.
when you are first starting, let's say you're working with a singer and you haven't tuned yet, like you haven't.
Yeah.
Uh, what is the process here? Can you just show us a little bit? Like you start tuning
Yeah.
the equipment. How do you do it?
So I will just tell you how the structure has changed. Now what I'm holding on to is this is a fiber body Mridangam. Okay. So this is a fiber body, and these nuts and bolts hold both the right and left drum heads. Okay. Initially, it used to be like Pakhwaj. It used to have right and left drum head held by Baddi, a common string that would run across from top to bottom, holding both edges, both the sides. So Mridangam per se has much thicker skin than the pakhwaj. Okay, so what happens is you can't actually, however heavy the hammer can be, it makes little difference on very strictly very thick skinned mridangams on those to tune. So we have this stone, okay, which carries certain weight, and then you use the pullu. This is called a pullu in Tamil, and this is like a gatta for pakhwaj. So if you want to get it down, you hit it upwards, so it loosens the drum head like this way. If I hit it upwards, then this is going to go low. If I hit it from the top, like this, if I hit it from the top, it is going to tighten the skin. Okay, so that is how it used to be done. But with the nut and bolt coming in, now we use a spanner to tighten or loosen the place where you need to tune. Minor tuning can still be done with the stone bit. So that is how the tuning is done. So I'll just show you. So if I go to change a bit. Okay, I can show it to you. If I loosen, what happens?
The tabla would be ta 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 ta.
Yeah, it will be up. It will be up. So went down by a little. So this is fine tuning and make tuning. I mean, nut and bolt can take you almost one full note up, not semitone, one full note up, and maybe one full note down also, if you maintain the drum head well. And the other thing, what used to be with Bhatti, you'll need to take it to a maker and then get it tuned for that day. Okay. Things have changed since then. I mean, Suresh Talwalkarji worked with somebody and then got this seen on newer tablas that have come up. That was also used on Mridangam and Pakhwaj for a while. So basically, this nut and bolt thing may be handy for people. Like for Mumbai, the repairer comes only once in 6 months. So you need to maintain your mridangams well. This is a better option because he can courier you the drum head and then you can fit it up yourself at home. So those are the changes that are coming in. That's about it. That's for the tuning bit as of now. I hope I answered your question right.
Yes, thank you. A quick follow-up on that. Once you tune, let's say for a particular concert, you talk about Mumbai, which is very humid. And so within the course of one concert, do you see that this tuning drifts typically, or because the skin is so thick, as you mentioned, it does not drift?
Good question.
No, there are a lot of other factors one has to consider. Is you forget the outside temperature. When you get into a hall, if it is heavily AC, then your mridangam might react in a different way, like the tabla or any other leathered instrument for that matter. It also depends on your own hands, if they are sweaty or if they carry moisture, how it is going to sound on that day. So all that comes into play, I guess. But overall, I have seen this has a better hold and a uniform tuning that is possible. And of course, if you have the facility like tabla players do in Mumbai, you can go on the day of the concert and get your tablas pulled to the right amount and then take it back to your concert stage. In fact, I have seen very confident tabla makers come with a tabla for Anindudha or Sopanda or even Zakir Bhai, and then say, you play your solo on this today, I have tuned it for you. So there are very confident makers, but unfortunately for Mridangam, I don't have a maker stationed in Mumbai. So we have to look at other options that keep the instrument going.
So what do you do? Do you have like 2 or 3 different mridangams
I have
tuned in?
I have 11 mridangams in all. No, I have 11 mridangams totally, and I have, on a given key, I have 2 mridangams always. So that's how I take care. That's how we do it.
That's good. It's very interesting because sometimes you have AC and even the bansuri, the flute falls.
Yeah.
My God, you have a problem because you have come out of the house thinking that this is what it is. And then you are
Change.
totally sozzled out what to do. So it's
Yeah.
excellent.
So basically, lot of, I think we touched on a lot of topics. More. I mean, in a general way, I'm happy the way it has happened.
Good. What other questions do you have? Anything, George? Aditya?
Yes. Thank you, Guruji, for the wonderful presentation. And one of the aspects that I was very curious about, you were mentioning how in each area, like Kerala or whatever state, that there was a different way of playing that came out. And I live in a place that's a kind of high desert, and I do farming. And so the way that we farm is very dependent on the materials and the land and how the seasons move. And so one of my curiosities is the kind of the folk side of it, of what are the ways that music rose out of that land to also play to what's needed in the season, the dances and the rituals. And then maybe within that, the kind of the origin story of the mridangam, of like why was this particular wood or animals that made the drum?
Yeah. So as far as the origin of this instrument goes, I see one frank thing is I have not had any. I have not written any exams for mridangam. I have learned the mridangam, yes, for a long time. That's it. There are people who have done their degrees, and maybe that is a part of the curriculum which tells you the origin of the mridangam per se. Okay, but for me, it has been the temples for I think a very long time. We don't know I will not go into the origin of this instrument, but like Africa, African traditions, we also down south have a lot of Tamil, especially, still follows that tradition. Like it is all connected to the temple. Okay, so if and there's this beautiful concept of you every village will have a temple. You are supposed to go to the temple normally. As you get old, you are not able to go. Then there's a procession brought out with the idol from there. Okay, so you can be in your house and then see the temple procession. Now, each activity that happened at the temple, there will be a different beat on the tabla. So African traditions have that for sure. There's a birth of a boy, there's a different beat. There's a birth of a girl child, there's a different beat. There's harvest, there's a different beat. So likewise, every step that happened through the procession, you would know that this is being done in the procession. So it basically splitting up your grooves to identify what activity is happening at what point. So but these traditions slowly mridangam per se comes into falls into a pocket where this is an instrument which was played within the temple premises. Some instruments like the chenda, which is there in Kerala, which is they stand and play in huge groups. But those instruments are played outdoors. Whereas if you go into a temple, then mostly you will see the mridangam, ghatam, ganjira, the softer sounding instruments, and maybe music instruments with a ring. Like unlike drums or congas, that is a part of mridangam, pakhwaj, and tabla that I have seen. I have not come across very many percussion instruments which carry that ring, which emphasize on the root note that we are talking about. So essentially, coming from the classical side, only grooves could change in accompaniment for folk versus a classical song accompaniment. That is how I will see it. So these are, and they change from, again, area to area. Andhra has a different way of playing that. Kerala has some songs for which the accompaniment is different. That's how I see the whole scenario.
Wonderful. Great. Any other questions you have? Shalini ji, Gurmeet ji, Shrikant ji?
Sridhar ji, I just want to thank you for your wonderful words of wisdom.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I'm just soaking up everything from these fine performers. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. It's I mean, just curious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now the tabla, you get it in various pitches, and you can get it in that pakhwaj mridangam range as well if you want. I'm just curious, how come in neither the pakhwaj or mridangam is it simply impossible to get those higher pitches, like to make it sound like a tabla, or is it?
No,
is it just...
you can, but the basic thing. See, if I were to argue it that way, you hear the top tone or an octave up when we are talking about something like C, C sharp, D till E. If I were to say that we are accompanying a singer who is in Kali Char, Kali Pach, then what do you do? You have a tabla for that. So what do? You have to get the tabla down.
Yeah.
So
Aditya ji, actually, Sridhar ji, Aditya ji is a tabla player himself. He plays tabla.
So I'm just saying, it's how you want to see the situation. I think if you are accompanying a female singer who's singing higher, then you need to have a tabla which goes lower. You can't, because those you can't keep going up, and then it will not be playable. The surface will be very small for you to execute certain things. Like
okay, yeah, okay,
yeah. So you might, typically one will not be able to generate the sound that a khol generates, because it is actually playing that high.
Yeah.
That is not possible on a tabla nor on mridangam as of now. So that's how I see it. So each one has its own place where it sounds nice and rounded and beautiful. I think that's how everybody goes by it.
Thank you.
I think that's what it is. That if Aditya ji, if I am wearing a very shiny suit with tie and everything, people will say, "What is wrong with this fellow? What happened? Any special occasion?" So the beauty of each of them, and all of us here as well, are so distinct. The beauty of the mridangam stays there. Otherwise, the ringing sounds, and sometimes some people play mridangam, I have heard, and Sridhar ji might point me out, they make it as high as possible. Then that charm is gone, that the beauty is gone. Maybe I am old school, I'm thinking, I don't know.
Each one has its own room to breathe, and that's how it sounds nice.
Now, I was just curious as to whether it was a purely technical issue or whether it was more an aesthetic.
No, but we go on. Mridangam can go up till G sharp in a nice way. Okay. So, but what I do is I ask for a mridangam in G that can go to G sharp or come down to F sharp, and still sounds nice. But if I were to have something in E, I will make a separate mridangam for that. I will not bring the G guy to E. No, that will lose tone. So basically, and I mean, one of the travels, Zakir Bhai said a very nice thing about Ali Akbar Khan Sahab. He said, today we are, I mean, tuning to 440, and then, you know, everybody has to be on the same page. That's nice, but like you go to play in Ludhiana in the winter, you open the instrument, let's say, for example, Sarod, you open the instrument, you stroke it, you tune it, and wherever it sounds nice, that day's concert will be in that pitching. So you don't force anything. Today, I mean, we are, when I say I'm tying this up with this which holds, it's the tension that we are looking at, and then it has to remain there through the concert and all that. But music is a different section other than all this that we're talking about in the true sense. It's a part of music, good music, but music is still a different section apart from the tuning bit.
Excellent. What else? Is there any other questions? Otherwise, Shrikantji, Kashyapji, Stephen, anybody else? Otherwise, it's quite late in the day, and we would not like to break his sleep today, Sridharji.
No, I'm fine.
I have one more.
Sure,
Yeah.
Go ahead, sure.
Yeah. So you talk about music. You showed in your demonstration the Kerala style of playing with the staccatos, right?
Yeah.
So I was thinking, let's say you are playing with some vocalist, and you're not playing a well-defined composition that you both agreed on. It's like an impromptu concert, right?
Right.
How do you modify your style of playing depending on whether the vocalist is singing something a very melodious, soft kind of Vairavi or something versus something different?
Yeah. So basically, you have to react. The accompaniment is about the reaction of what is being given to you. If you come with a pre-planned, if I hear something very beautiful, and I mean, with words or without words, and you need to take a break for it to sustain, it might not be in tal, maybe it might not be in the time cycle, it will come to an abrupt end somewhere, but if it's sounding beautiful, do it. That's how music breathes. If you try to fix everything down to the start and end points, then it doesn't breathe much. You have to be strict at points, yes, not always. So that not always should be there. That's how I feel. So when I'm hearing something for the first time, and I see the progression. If I need to come in and meddle with it, then I will fill it at points where it doesn't disturb the singer, still make impact. Okay. Whereas, things where you can go together, you need to separate out, run parallel to him, get back to the sum. All that is wait and watch. You have to watch, hear, and play. It is not just coming with
So Sridharji, if I ask you, can you hear me? The audio is little. If I ask you, how would you react to this?
Yeah.
Da 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 da. What would be your reaction musically? Da 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 da. La da 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 da. That's what he was talking about, the reactive.
Yeah. So this is one. If you want to make it in a this phrase, no. I want it busier. So it becomes occupies the same space, but it sounds more fuller now. Become the same number of spaces that you occupy is the same, but you have filled it up, made it more busy.
It's the genius of the person, and
It's not genius. It's not the genius. I mean, when you do your basic exercises, how do you do it?
Yeah.
It's all double speeds. So it occupies the same space, but you're playing this like A to B is, let's say, 120 kilometers. I'm traveling at 30 kilometers an hour. I'll take 4 hours. If I'm going to go 40, I'm going to take only 3 hours. I'm speeding up. So that speeding up is measured. Distance is fixed, 120. So that those changes in speeds, you can decide and then execute what races you want to.
Nice, good example.
Yeah.
Excellent. What else? Gurmeet ji?
Thank you so much, Sridhar ji and Guruji.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's my first time learning. So I'm absorbing all the information. Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's wonderful to listen to you.
Thank you. I hope I didn't confuse all in any bit.
No, it's very good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very heartwarming to learn and to know, because we are learning Bansuri. I'm learning Bansuri. So as you go along, you need to understand the other instruments also, how they're going to come into.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, wonderful. Shrikant ji, anything you want to ask?
Namaste.
Namaste ji.
No questions. We're good. Thank you.
No questions. Any other questions you have, guys? Now or never. And then we can. It's a
I'll play
beautiful.
one last bit for you all as a finale.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sridhar ji. बहुत अच्छा लगा. Very good.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
hopefully we should play together in August. And there,
Surely.
it's a pleasure. And it's not only that, his wife cooks very nicely. Last time she made some beautiful appam, I think she made. And so that is bigger attraction.
Come. We'll meet up soon.
My best wishes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much. Thanks to all of you.
Good fun being on
Absolutely.
this talk. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thanks a ton. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Take care. Namaskar.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, Sridhar ji. Namaskar. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.